In our book review segment today, we're going to be exploring Behind Prison Walls, Unlocking a Safer South Africa. And our Justice Edwin Cameron, Rebecca Gore and Sohela Surajpal, they offer moral and constitutional critique of South Africa's prison system and challenges that South Africans to also confront contradictions of our democracy. It's based on the prison conditions that defy dignity, that defy equality, and also defy justice at large. Now, Justice Edwin Cameron joins us this morning virtually to chat about this offering. And so on that note, good morning, Justice Cameron, and thank you for your time with us here on the SABC at this hour.
What a joy to be with you and your viewers, Liesl.
Thank you for penning thoughts to paper. This work is, it's deeply rooted in empathy and obviously with your legal authority, given your experience as well. So thank you for that. I wonder if we can start off by looking at the motivation of the book and if there was any specific moment during your visits as an inspecting judge that would have compelled you to write this book. It's so timely since your launch in Johannesburg on the 4th of June. We've seen many revelations unfolding. You've also alluded to how prisons are the constitutional blind spot of South Africa. What do you mean by all of this?
What a lovely question, Liesl. The book is co-written with two of my research associates from the Judicial Inspectorate of Correctional Services, JICS, Rebecca Gore and Sohela Surajpal. And we all were deeply involved in the prisons work. We learned an enormous amount from the JICS personnel. We visited a lot of prisons. And we realized that there was a systemic underlying problem. We realized you can't blame the prisons personnel, most of whom are loyal and committed officers of the state. And of course, there's quite a big minority who engage in smuggling and so on. Yeah. But the systemic problem goes deeper. How do you fix the prisons without fixing crime intelligence, which is what you've mentioned in your introduction? So we wanted to write a book that wouldn't just say, oh, gee, how terrible it is that there's overcrowding, and it is terrible that there's overcrowding, but one that looks at the more hopeful possibilities for us as South Africans to fix things.
Yeah, well, thank you for speaking to that and for setting the context. Even if we're going into your point about systemic decay, I mean, in one of the chapters, you describe how prison governance has been delegated to gangs. What would it take to restore the state authority and protect inmates from internal criminal hierarchies? I'm asking this because we're obviously seeing recent developments in our society following Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkonazi's revelations, which unfortunately couldn't be more timely for your work.
Correct, Liesl. You see, the thing is, we as South Africans in our democracy, we made a promise to ourselves, many promises about racial justice, racial equality, housing, education, healthcare. We haven't kept all of those promises. We've fulfilled some of them partly. The same with prisons. The constitutional promises conditions of detention for everyone compatible with human dignity. Now, to get to the problem, the first problem of human dignity is terrible overcrowding. Why is there terrible overcrowding? Because we made a wrong turn in our democracy. We outsourced crime control to imprisonment. And imprisonment isn't a crime control answer. So we've got to start with crime intelligence. Now, in 2011, when President Jacob Zuma appointed a criminal, Mr. Richard Mdluli, to head crime intelligence, he also appointed people of terribly shady connections and commitments to the National Prosecuting Authority, to head the police. Our murder rate started going up. You can see it from 2011. The murder rate goes up and up and up until it's almost double. And so you've got to start with crime intelligence. You've got to appoint a competent, committed, loyal, efficient person to head crime intelligence, to clean it out and to start getting to the extortion rackets, to the copper cable theft rackets, the kidnapping rackets. All of those rackets can be penetrated by crime intelligence. Then, of course, you've got to get competence in the police, which is what you're referring to. Yeah. And then the National Prosecuting Authority, to which Advocate Shabila Bitoy has been struggling with. You've got to get them efficient as well. So a long answer, Liesl, because there isn't a magic bullet.
Yeah.
And yet the important thing is that we South Africans can do it. We've got the competent people. At the moment, we're not appointing them. We're appointing shady people. We're recycling people with shady pasts who are involved in theft and looting, and they pop up on this public board, they pop up in this municipality, but we can change all of that.
Justice Cameron, you also link dignity with public safety. And one of the more harrowing parts of the book is also just how, in your description of, the gang violence, the numbers gang, the brutal violence inside prisons like Paulsmoor Prison and St. Albans. Talk to us about how you witnessed and how it affected you firsthand. And then, given what you've just alluded to, do you believe that prison officials are powerless in the face of this gang control at this point? Is there active complicity as well? What is the truth on that front?
Many prisons across the world have gangs, particularly in South and Central America, but our gang system is unique. It goes back 120 years. It's deeply embedded, and it's very difficult to eradicate. It's very difficult to control. And of course, prison officers are subjected to the gangs that they subordinate to them. Some of them cooperate with them. So again, it's not a quick answer, but I want to give a recent example. We went to Durban Westfield Prison at the end of March, and we inspected other prisons as well. But we saw a cell which was designed for about 22 people that had 82 people in it. And we saw remand prisoners who were inside for possession of small amounts of wunga, who had been given bail of 3 or 5 or 400 rand, who couldn't afford it. So the circumstances, especially of awaiting trial prisoners, that particular cell that we saw wasn't an awaiting trial prisoner, it was a sentenced prisoner, which makes it worse in a way because sentenced prisoners have to live there longer. But we also saw good news stories, Liesl. I want to tell you, recently, just last month, we visited a prison at Devon, which is a short-term prison for prisoners who have been sentenced to less than 2 years. Some of them have got slightly more. And it's the closest I come. I don't want to say this, but there are very few prisons that are happy prisons, but the prison at Devon was almost a happy prison. The prisoners were walking around freely in the yards. They were playing darts and they were playing other games, dambord in Afrikaans, chess, bridge, card games. And the prison was well run, it was well maintained. So all credit to it's a prison close to Nigel. So we saw light points. There are well-run prisons run by committed personnel from DCS. A couple of years ago in the snow, just 2 years ago, at the same time of a cold snap at the end of July, we visited Ekuseni, which is a youth centre close to Newcastle and Vryheid in northern KwaZulu-Natal. And I wouldn't call it a happy place at all because those youngsters were not happy. They weren't being trained. But to the head of the prison, Mr. Dladla, his deputy, Mr. Janse van Rensburg, were outstanding officers who really cared for these youngsters, ensure that they got education. So there are light points, there are achievement points, like with the rest of our country.
Yes.
And we can make many more light points.
Yes, and it's important to also highlight those good news stories. And so thank you for speaking to that, because even if we have to turn our attention to oversight and how, frankly, you speak about the weaknesses of the Judicial Inspectorate, how little political support there is also for prison reform at large. Why, from your vantage point, do you think our leaders avoid this issue? And if we're looking at possibilities that can be explored in terms of, the inspectorate to be given, constitutional legislative independence from the Department of Correctional Services, how could that aid the work that needs to be done? Perhaps also just address some of the complicit or negligence as well that's come to the fore.
We have got allies. I want to tell you about the new chair of the Corrections Committee. One of the perhaps the only good thing about this vast cabinet we've got is that we've got a dedicated minister, Minister Groenewald, for corrections. We used to have Minister Lamola, who was dealing with the whole vast range of justice issues. We've also got a dedicated parliamentary committee under Ms. Komutso Ramolobeng, who is really determined. She wants to kick butt. She wants to get things going. She wants to see things happening. She's very active in her oversight. And of course, the National Commissioner, Mr. Makoti Dobukhali, is also favorably disposed to JEX, but we've got too small a budget. We haven't got enough inspectors. We haven't got enough independent prison visitors. So there's a lot that should be done for our inspectorate, but we do have a statute, a draft bill that will be going through Parliament next year under Ms. Ramolobeng's very sharp-eyed and critical supervision, which we welcome. And that will give us more powers. So that's part of it, Liesl. Part of it, however, is the systemic issues, which is fixing the whole flow of criminal justice order. We can reverse this trend. In America, murders have been falling because they've also shifted their view. We thought we could outsource crime control to imprisonment, and it was a dreadful mistake. We urge in the book, we urge the reform of life sentences, of compulsory sentences, of over-incarceration, of over-sentencing. And let me I won't give your viewers this morning on a beautiful Sunday morning. It's shining in Gauteng. So I'm hoping to go out on my bike after our interview. It's so beautiful. Not too many statistics, Liesl, but let me give your viewers one.
Sure.
1994, end of 1994, how many prisoners in South Africa serving sentences of life? 495. End of July 2025, how many? 18,600. And many of those, I believe, and here I differ from the minister, I believe that he should be more generous in approving the parole of those sentenced to life who've been through the National Council on Correctional Services, which is headed and deputy headed by a judge. So it's been careful, and the minister's been very snook. So here I am criticizing him on SABC, and I know he won't mind because he can criticize me too.
Exactly.
So we can decongest the prisons, we can change the statutes, we can fix crime intelligence. None of it magic bullets that you can fire off this morning, but everything that is within our possible powers to do.
And it's also important for us as citizens not to look away or shy away from what happens behind prison walls. That conscientizing is also so important. Justice Edwin Cameron, there's so many more questions that I have, but thank you for your time and for giving us some of your feedback through this timely work. Thank you for your time, your truth-telling, and your tireless advocacy. Your book really just reminds us that justice doesn't stop at the prison gate. Again, just in pursuit of justice, dignity for all. All right, let's leave that conversation there. We'll be right back after this.